Welcome back to the Practical Enthusiast Garage. We haven't made a video in a while, but in this one we're going to do a bit of work to the GSXR 1000, put a new part on it, and just do a general garage update to see what I've been up to since the last time we met. That's right, this beautiful machine will be the star of today's video, and it has just been an absolute peach of a motorcycle. I love it. I've been going through, cleaning things here and there, and adding a few parts which we'll go through, but today we're going to be focusing on replacing one thing that's been sticking out now that everything else has been refreshed and cleaned and perfected, and that is that Woodcraft stator cover there on the left side here. There's nothing actually wrong with it. It's never been damaged. It's really in perfect condition, other than it's supposed to be black and it's kind of this maroon faded color, and that's what happens to black anodization if it's subjected to a lot of UV or something. I'm not sure, because the rest of the bike doesn't look faded like it's been in sunlight, so I'm not sure what happened there. But we've got a new one over on the bench which we'll be installing today. Now moving to the back of the bike, there's another thing that I changed, and it's more related to the actual swing arm stand, and I added these Superbike lifters right here, which I think are really cool. They make the bike look a little bit more modern instead of those little pegs that hang off the swing arm there. But I never had a mounting spool that would actually connect well to this bracket. So I found some in Europe that were the correct size. I had the correct size spool for the lifter, but when I got them, the dowel that fits into this Woodcraft stand was too wide. So then I had to take it to a machine shop and have this turned down 1 millimeter so it could actually fit into there. At the end of this, I ended up spending way more time and money than I wanted to just get a proper looking lifter set up for the rear. But now that it's done, I'm happy I went through it, and now it is a proper Superbike lifter setup for the rear. Now moving on to the other side of the bike, I went above and beyond for the rear brake on this bike. So the last time I showed this machine, it had the stock rear brake setup, and it worked mostly fine, but I just felt like the rear wasn't the same caliber as the front with regards to a Brembo brake system, a brake tech rotor, steel braided lines, all of that. It just didn't have it on the rear end, so it looked a little out of place with the rest of the componentry going on this bike. So I just bit the bullet and put in one of those beautiful Brembo billet rear calipers on the rear. Of course, installing one of these is not a straightforward process on a K5 K6 GSXR, because you need a custom caliper bracket, which if you look in here, this is actually a machined aluminum piece that had to come from WeBike in Japan, and that was a pricey bit, but that allowed me to actually install this Brembo caliper. And to finish it off, I put a full floating brake tech 220 millimeter rear rotor in there just so it matched the front. Now, since the Brembo caliper has larger diameter pistons in it, that meant that the stock master cylinder had too small of a bore, so you had an improper ratio. You had a really stiff pedal feel, basically, and you didn't get a whole lot of braking force with the rear. So I found a 13 millimeter diameter, which is what they recommend with this caliper, and it's actually off of a Honda Hornet, I think it is. And the banjo bolt, or the banjo fitting orientation, is different than the stock GSXR, but in fact I used a standard fitting steel braided Spiegler line and was able to make that work. Of course, as part of all this, I had to change the brake pressure switch because I had the wrong thread pitch to match this Honda master cylinder. I also put in a Sato Racing brake lever return spring, so now it snaps right back to position. Gives you a little bit better brake pedal feel in the rear. So that is basically the end of the blingification for this bike, at least the big ticket items. So now the brake system is uniform, front to rear, and it's looking very pretty indeed. And over here is really the main event of this video, a brand new Woodcraft billet stator cover. Look at this beautiful hunk of aluminum. So nice of a component. And it's properly black anodized finish. This is the way it should look, and it'll match the rest of the bike a lot better once that's in place. This does come with a new gasket, which is nice, some mounting bolts, and this slider protector. So this is just a chunk of aluminum that mounts to the outside. So in the event that you were to low side, this would be the sacrificial piece initially anyway, and this is replaceable. And it has some bolts with some O-rings that make sure oil doesn't leak out of that. But otherwise, it should be a pretty straightforward swap. The only gotcha here is that you do need to apply some RTV where the stator wires pass through. So it won't be immediately ready to be ridden after you install it, but that's okay. Now, to get full access to that stator cover, you do need to pop off the left side lower fairing. With the fairing off, now we can get to all of the 8mm perimeter bolts. And I've got a baking pan from the kitchen just to catch any oil that might fall out. Strong magnet behind there. Alright, so there we are. That's the stator. You know, it's kind of lost its anodization color on the inside, so I wonder if it's just heat that kind of makes it go this maroon color. Alright, so that is it removed. Still a nice looking piece. Let's see if I can't get this gasket to come off in one piece. Nice. Interestingly, it doesn't look like they used any RTV when they sealed this up. It's amazing it wasn't leaking. Alright, now it's time to mount this protective cover to the stator cover, and they supply these bolts with little O-rings. They do want you to put thread lock on there so that it doesn't rattle out. I imagine snug is adequate for this. Now, Suzuki says to put RTV in 3 different places. 2 little spots here where the cases separate, and then right where the wire grommet goes in. So you can really use any RTV you have laying around. I have some of this Toyota FIPG. It works pretty good for this sort of thing. Now we can set the new gasket on there. Now the service manual doesn't specifically call out to Loctite the bolts that hold the stator to the cover, but I'm going to go ahead and do it because the torque value is really low. It's only 7 foot-pounds or 10 Newton meters. And I just want to make sure they don't accidentally loosen themselves. Just put a little bit on them. Okay. So again, this is 7 foot-pounds or 10 Newton meters. Now the service manual calls out for replacing sealing washers on 2 of the bolts. So 2 of the bolts actually seal oil passages apparently. One goes here and the other goes here. And if you look at the sealing washer on that, it is flattened. I don't imagine it's going to be sealing much, and I don't know how much sealing it really needs. But I do have a kit of sealing washers, and I'm always looking for opportunities to use them, and luckily the smallest size over here fits. So I'm just gonna pull these old ones off and just fit new ones. The outer diameter isn't quite the same, but the inner diameter is what matters. You just let that slide over the top. And now when that's torqued down, it'll actually crush that inner rubber section of the washer. These are 2 different lengths. The long one goes on the bottom, the short one goes on the top. I'm going to run these in at 2 foot-pounds. The final torque is 7 foot-pounds. I just want to take out all the slack. All right, again, 7 foot-pounds, 10 Newton meters. Oh yeah, I'd say that looks a lot better. Sunlight's pretty extreme right now, but now it matches that lower fairing, all black. It's gorgeous. This bike, whoa, it's just got it all. I think I added some more things really since I last showed this bike on the channel. I added some more carbon fiber pieces like this intake runner. I replaced this panel because it had some rock chips and it had a little crack in it. So I replaced that. I actually replaced all the tail unit fairings, the solo cover, these side panels, and the center panel for the same reason. They had like really fine scratches in them and it just didn't shine up very nice, and like it just brought the rest of the bike down. So replaced that and also added these as well. So it's got a lot of nice carbon pieces, and most of the bodywork is actually brand new OEM. No, none of the aftermarket stuff. It is real Suzuki panels on this. Just a gorgeous machine, ready to be ridden. So what else has been going on here in the garage? Well, still have the Ducati 1198S. This nothing really has changed on this bike overall, but perhaps this winter I may service the rear suspension. I think the rear shock is starting to leak a bit at the seal head. I want to service the eccentric hub and lubricate the swing arm bearings and all the pivot points. So that's going to be a pretty big job. It's going to lock up my space here in the garage for like a month. So I got to make sure I don't need access to anything while I'm working on that. And then we have this little guy. I've had this 1979 Vespa 50 Special for more than a decade now, and it has slowly gotten worse and worse performance till about a year ago. I went to start it and it just wouldn't start. I took a compression reading and it had like 40 psi, and that's not enough for any real internal combustion engine to run off of. So I've set it aside, trying to figure out what I want to do to it, and I finally figured out the plan forward, and this is going to have its own project series. I know that because I've started ordering parts for it, so there's no going back now. And we're not simply going to put another 50cc cylinder and barrel in that. Nope, it's going to be a bit more. And these things are really cool. It's not just a moped. It is more of a motorcycle than it is a moped, because it has an actual clutch lever and a 4-speed manual transmission. So, you know, you shift it by twisting the grip here, and here's your clutch lever. So it really is more motorcycle than scooter. So I'm kind of excited to bump the performance of this up and actually make it rideable around town, because in its standard form, you'd be lucky to see 25 miles an hour, maybe 30 if you're going downhill. So yeah, I'm hoping it'll have quite a bit more than that when it's done. So keep an eye out for that series. Then we have my R1200 RT. This has been a good bike. Nothing really new to report on it. It does everything I asked for it. It's comfortable. It's quick. It handles well. These bikes are really wolves in sheep clothing, I think. They are amazing machines. However, sometimes I think about looking at an R1250 RT, kind of the newest version of this lineage, just because it has a lot more power. But at the end of the day, is it worth an extra $20,000 on top of what this one's valued at? That's going to be a hard one to debate. As far as cars go, there's been a few changes, I guess. The S3 kind of just sits here in the garage. Doesn't get driven a whole lot, but hasn't had any problems either. It's been a great car. And then looking at the rest of the fleet out here, still have my 535i. Hasn't given me any troubles other than tire pressure monitoring sensor warnings, which usually just needs some air. But it's been a good car overall. This might be new. I don't think it's ever shown up on the channel. Bought this about a year ago, and this is a 2003 4Runner with a V8. It is an awesome machine. It's an interesting spec because it's an SR5, but it does have leather seats. Interior's like brand new on it. This thing has 276,000 miles on it, something like that. I went through and did all of the GX470 work on it, because these are basically the same, have basically the same engine, transmission, drivetrain, frame. Really just the interiors and bodywork are different. So I didn't get that on video just because it would be repetitive video. I mean, it's basically all the same things the GX470 needed, except for this does not have the variable valve timing system, so I didn't need to go in and remove the camshafts and do all that just to change the camshaft oil seals. So saved a little bit of labor there. It doesn't have air suspension in the rear. It's like the simplified version of the GX. And then here is our commuter car. This has needed a bit of work lately. I just haven't got it on video. However, I replaced the front struts on it, and with KYB units, so they're like quality parts, but the passenger side one already blew out. So maybe I'll get that on video, just showing me changing those things out. Needs an engine mount and a serpentine belt tensioner, idler pulley, easy stuff like that. But, might as well get it on video if I've got the time. But that's it. Those are all the cars in the lineup these days. So that's the update for this time. Be sure to keep an eye out for any more videos on the Ducati and the Vespa project, as well as some random repairs we have coming through the garage. Until then, we'll see you all again next time.